API 574 piping inspection recommended practice, terms and definitions. In this submodule, we shall summarize API 574 inspection practices for piping system components, highlighting information that could be potential exam question. API 574 has 13 chapters. It starts with a scope, chapter 1, references, chapter 2, definitions, chapter 3, and then go on to explain piping components 4 and joining methods, chapter 5. Then it explains reasons for inspection, chapter 6, inspection plans, chapter 7, frequency and extent of inspection, chapter 8, and safety, chapter 9. Inspection procedure and practices are in chapter 10, pressure test in chapter 11, minimum thickness calculations in chapter 12, and finally records in chapter 13. Annex A has a sample external inspection checklist, and API 574 piping inspection practice also has 35 figures and 7 tables. Scope of API 574 piping inspection is to improve your skill and increase your knowledge of piping inspection. There are several references, but remember below titles as potential exam questions. 579, fitness for service. 583, corrosion under insulation. 598, valve inspection and testing. 941, steels for hydrogen service at elevated temperature. And ASME PCC2, repair of pressure equipment and piping. Elective terms and definition are explained here. There could be potential questions during the exam. Alteration, any physical work that changes piping integrity operating window, pressure and temperature working range. Alteration changes design input and output and therefore has design implications. And hence piping engineer need to approve it. Like for like replacement or duplicate replacement of piping is not an alteration. Auxiliary piping or small size piping, less than 2 inch, such as pressure and temperature gauge lines, and it's not the main piping. Cladding is pipe internal cladding can be metallic, weld overlay, or non-metallic, Teflon. Cladding is used to resist against the erosion corrosion, and when it is too expensive or simply impractical to make the whole piping from the cladding material itself. Conditioning monitoring locations, the points with 2 inch radius, I should be maximum 3 inch radius on all 4 sides of pipe plane, 12, 3, 6, 9 o'clock position, chosen from location assumed to be the most affected areas, points chosen to represent the general corrosion behavior of the piping. Periodic NDE examinations are carried out to record the metal loss due to corrosion comparing to the last readings or previous readings. Contact points, when pipe contacts other items such as a pipe support, moisture may be trapped at those pipe to support contact points, triggering localized corrosion combined with localized loading, resulting in pipe deformation and buckling. Pipe contact points may also gather dirt and sand and corrode faster in those areas. Corrosion allowance is an extra thickness reserved for metal loss over the lifetime of the pipe. This extra thickness cannot be utilized for design calculation of various loads such as pressure. Corrosion happens when a metal loses electron to another metal, which is nobler comparatively. In order to compensate for loss of electron, metal reacts with other elements such as oxygen, plenty in the atmosphere, and corrodes, forming iron oxide. Corrosion specialist is a person with sufficient knowledge and experience in material selection, corrosion mechanism, and preventive methods, and is approved by the owner user. Remember that the corrosion specialist API does not requires any special qualification, but says that it should be approved by the owner, because owner user is the ultimately responsible for piping fabrication, operation, and maintenance. Why corrosion specialist should be approved by owner user? Because owner user is ultimately responsible for safe operation of the piping. Corrosion under insulation, CUI, is used to insulation is used to hold the temperature and or protect the pipe against environmental corrosion. But if there is damage to insulation or if the pipe leak, accelerated corrosion can occur due to local accumulation of moisture combined with heat. For example, water trapped under an insulated carbon steel pipe, or chloride stress corrosion cracking of a stainless steel pipe under insulation. Cyclic service could be thermal, repeated heating and cooling, mechanical load, vibration, or repeated increase and decrease in pressure, leading to fatigue failure. Dead legs, pipe with one end blinded or attached to a pressure or temperature gauge with no flow or little flow. An indication is a response from non-destructive examination method. If it is for real, not false, because of NDE oversensitivity or NDE equipment fault, then it is called the discontinuity. Discontinuity can be irrelevant due to inherent design and fabrication, such as forced fit connection when a line appears by MT or PT method. If a discontinuity is relevant, an unplanned or unwanted condition, then after evaluation, determining the size, type, location of the discontinuity, it shall be interpreted, which means it should be determined whether such discontinuity is between tolerance threshold or acceptance criteria or not. If such discontinuity is over and above the acceptance criteria, it is called defect and rejected, need to be repaired or removed. Design pressure is the maximum pressure the piping can withstand. Design pressure also depends on the temperature, because metal tend to turn brittle when the temperature goes down or lose strength when the temperature is high. Hence, the maximum pressure needs to be adjusted with temperature. Pipe have a range of maximum pressure and maximum temperature threshold, or minimum pressure temperature threshold that they can operate, called integrity operating window. Examination exclusively means non-destructive examination. Examiner is a person as per ASNT SNTC1A guideline who examines the piping by the method he or she is qualified under the direction of the piping inspector. It is the inspector who approves the report and interprets the result, checks indication against API 570 acceptance criteria or B31.3 construction code, and accepts or rejects them. External inspection means visual inspection when the pipe is in service. External inspection is aimed at finding any damage or defects that could endanger the pipe integrity. In contrast, in-service inspection is an external inspection that also involves NDE examinations. Fitness for service evaluation. Flaws and damages are assessed as per API 579 FFS Fitness for Service Assessment Standard. This is to determine the integrity of piping or for continued service. That is to determine whether, despite the presence of existing flaws and damages, does the piping can still withstand the pressure and other loading, as well as having enough corrosion allowance until the next scheduled inspection interval or not. Flash point is determined by heating the liquid slowly, at the same time using a spark to ignite it. The temperature where the liquid starts catching fire is called the flash point. For example, gasoline's flash point is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see here, there is this pan with the liquid in it, and to determine its flash point, it keeps stirring it so to have uniform temperature by a heat from below, and then periodically there is a spark or ignition burner that it gives a spark, and the moment it starts, you see a fire, that's a flash point. Hold point is an inspection and test plan. The inspector identifies or annotates the activities he or she wishes to witness, review, monitor, approve, or hold. Hold point means an activity is very important and need inspector's verification and approval before the next activity can proceed. Witness points are less important and may proceed irrespective of whether the inspector is present or not. Injection points is the point where another fluid such as chlorinating agent or corrosion inhibitor is injected into the process stream. Injection point is different from mixing point where two process streams meet. In service, any piping that is neither retired nor degassed, isolated, is still considered to be in service from safety point of view. In-service piping also includes piping used for intermittent service or during the shutdown or outage. Piping not used in operation yet because being under construction or in transport or in storage as a spare pipe are not considered in service pipe. Inspection is classified as external, internal, or on-stream inspection. Internal and on-stream inspection shall be done specifically by the inspector, while external inspection can be done under inspector's direction or supervision. NDE may be conducted by examiner at the discretion of responsible authorized piping inspector and become part of the inspection process, but the responsible authorized piping inspector shall review and approve the results. Inspection code means API 570 inspection code exclusively. Construction code is the one applicable and accepted by the buyer at the time of manufacturing, such as ASME B31.3. Inspection plan is a plan consisting of quality control activities, procedures, and methods, their sequence and status. Hold, witness, monitor, review, approval of relevant parties, contractor, client, inspector. The inspection plan defines the inspection and examination method and coverage of piping based on expected damage mechanism. Inspector means an authorized piping inspector per API 570. Integrity operating window is the pressure and temperature range, among other design parameters that the piping is allowed to operate. Intermittent service, non-continuous service, on and off operation, pipe operating on scheduled and regular interval, occasional turnarounds or outage due to breakdown or maintenance outage in a continuous process service are not considered as intermittent service. Internal inspection, inspecting inside of the pipe directly or indirectly using aids such as borescope as well as NDE. A thickness greater than the minimum required thickness but close warrants further inspection, review of remaining life, change of inspection interval, and the like. Minimum required thickness is the thickness excluding corrosion allowance for each component of a piping system based on the appropriate design code calculations and code allowable stress that considers pressure, mechanical, and structural loadings. Mixing point. Mixing points are locations in a process piping where two or more streams meet. The difference in streams may be composition, temperature, or any other parameter that may cause deterioration and require additional design considerations operating limits, inspection, and process monitoring. On-stream piping. Piping system either full or empty that have not been isolated and decontaminated that is still connected to in-service process equipment. Owner user, the organization or entity who has the ultimate responsibility for the safe operating of the piping system and control the operation, engineering, inspection, repair, alteration, pressure testing, and re-rating of the piping system. Pipe spool, fabricated pipe with a fitting or a flange which can be connected or removed from a piping system. Piping circuit, part of a piping system with the same operating and environmental condition having similar design construction, material exposed to the same or similar damage mechanism and corrosion. This is to deal with a bunch of piping at one go rather than one by one when determining the corrosion rate, inspection interval, method, and coverage of inspection, etc. The piping circuit are also divided based on the number of pipes that can be practically inspected at one time and for the easier record keeping. Piping engineer, a person or a group of persons who has the engineering knowledge and experience in mechanical and material characteristics of piping, can address the design requirements and approved by the owner user. Why owner user? Because the owner user is ultimately responsible for safe operation and integrity of the piping system. Piping system is a group of piping that are exposed to the same fluid temperature and pressure. You can see from the definition of piping system and piping circuit that piping circuit is a subclass of piping system. That means a piping system can have two or more piping circuits within it. Pressure design thickness, minimum pipe wall thickness calculated to hold the design pressure and temperature excluding corrosion allowance, mill tolerance, and any structural load. Quality assurance, planning a system of quality control points, including NDE examinations and inspection points, in order to ensure satisfactory performance of piping. See API 570, section 4.3.1 for contents of quality assurance management system. Quality control is the actual control activities performed to verify conformance of piping with a specification as outlined in the quality assurance plan. It includes material verification and certification check, NDA examination, inspection, testing, record keeping, etc. Repair. A repair is the work aimed at restoring. So always repair means restoring. They are synonymous. A piping system to a condition suitable for safe operation at the original design condition. So repair is original design condition, restoring. Any repair work leading to change in IOW, change in design premises such as design pressure or design temperature is called an alteration and termed as re-rating. Re-rating, changing, increasing or decreasing the integrity operating window, pressure temperature envelope such as allowable working pressure, minimum design metal temperature. Derating means degrading, for example, when reducing the maximum allowable working pressure in order to use part of the minimum required thickness for corrosion allowance. That was reserved for corrosion, reserved for design pressure. So you have less pressure here because you have reduced the maximum allowable working pressure and use that reserve pressure for the design for corrosion allowance. So it can be the standard lower pressure till the next inspection interval. Risk-based inspection, RBI, inspection effort and coverage depends on the probability and consequence of failure, product of them. Small bore piping with nominal pipe size of less than 2 inch. Oil to air interface is 12-inch below to 6-inch above surface. So you can say what is the soil to air interface. 12-inch below to 6-inch above surface, where piping is exposed to combination of soil, oxygen and moisture. All the ingredients you need for accelerated corrosion. Structural minimum thickness, the minimum required thickness to withstand all mechanical loads, including dead weight and buckling load, excluding corrosion allowance and mill tolerance. Telltale holes, small holes drilled on reinforcement to tell us about any leak as a result of metal corrosion and grit. You can see in this picture there is a hole here. This is a nozzle reinforcement. So if there is a leak behind the nozzle reinforcement, it can show us from there, so we can see the corrosion behind this area reinforcement. Temporary repairs, when a complete repair or a replacement of a pipe is not desirable because it leads to unplanned shutdown and loss of revenue, then temporary repairs such as applying fiberglass patches or metallic sleeves or patches to ensure sufficient integrity of pipe before pipe permanent repair or its complete replacement during the next scheduled turnaround. Testing exclusively used for those activities to determine or verify the mechanical characteristic of piping metal, strength, toughness, hardness, or validate the design calculation, hydrostatic test, pneumatic leak or tightness test. Utility piping, non-process piping used only for utilities, steam, water, air, nitrogen. Weld overlay, examples are stainless steel lining welded over carbon steel to resist corrosion and erosion. It is cheaper than fabricating the whole pipe from stainless steel. There are some acronyms and abbreviations that you would rather remember. ACFM, alternating current field measurement, acoustic emission, AE, conditioning monitoring location, CML, chloride stress corrosion cracking, CSCC, corrosion under insulation, CUI, or corrosion under fireproofing, CUF, DN, nominal diameter used in SI or metric system to describe pipe size equivalent to nominal pipe size, MPS, eddy current examination technique, ET, hydrofluoric acid, HF, hydrogen induced cracking, HIC, inspection data management system, IDMS, initial pulse, IP, UT, in UT ultrasonic first phase traveling across the thickness and returning called initial pulse. Management of change, MOC, maximum allowable working pressure, MAWP, magnetic flux leakage, MFL, magnetic particle examination technique, MT, nominal pipe size, MPS, related to pipe OD, while schedule is related to pipe ID. So as the schedule increases, the ID decreases because the thickness increases here. And normally we have pipes from 150, schedule 150 up to 2500. OD outside diameter, OSHA Occupational Safety and Health Organization, PNID piping and instrument diagram, PAUT phased array ultrasonic testing, process flow diagram is PFD, positive material identification, PMI, personal protective equipment is PPE, pressure relief devices are PRD, liquid penetrant examination technique, PT or penetrant test, post-well heat treatment, PWHT, risk-based inspection, RBI, radiographic examination technique, RT, small bore piping, SBP, stress corrosion cracking, SCC, time of flight diffraction, it's a type of technique, UT technique, TOFT, ultrasonic examination technique, UT, wet fluorescent magnetic particle examination, WFMT. See you at the next submodule.